chanchu rinpoche topra de longa yesum gewala ko tu terine sunte nema santa samgi bardu longa yesum gewala ko Sonje chodan suki chonam la chanchu bardu dani kyapsu che dagi jinsu gebe sonam ki chola benche sanje drupra shu sanje chodan suki chonam la chanchu bardu dani kyapsu che dagi jinsu gebe sonam ki Drola pencher sanje drupra shu sanje chodan soji chonam la chanchu bardo dhane kyapsu che dhage jinsu kepe sonam ke Drola pencher sanje drupra shu Kadang nyampe senchen tamche dewa dang Dewe gindan dambra gyuchi Dunya dang dunya ji kyudang dewa gyuchi Dunya mepe dewa dang me dewa gyuchi Nirin chadang nidang dewe dang Hyola nebra gyuchi Manang kadang nyampe senchen tamche dewa dang Dewe ding dambra gyuchi Dunya dang dunya ji kyudang dewa gyuchi Dunya mepe dewa thang me dewa jeje nirin chadang nidang dewe thang nyong la ne pro gyuje mo nang kadang nampe senchen tamche dewa thang dewe gyundan tembra gyuje dunya dang dunya ki gyudan dewa gyuje Dunya mepe dewa thang me dewa gyuje nirin chadang nidang dewe thang nyong la ne pro gyuje Wadang Chujin Shabbatang Jise Yirang Kushin Sowaye Gewa Chuse Dagi Jisaba Tamche Sobe Changju Chengo. Now the seven branch puja in the different languages. In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times. Before each of you, lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. And by the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, all conquerors appear vividly in my mind. With as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands, I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom are Buddhas numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way. With infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies, I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors, and praise all of you gone to bliss with the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments and excellent parasols, finest lamps and superior incense. I offer to you conquerors with excellent garments and best fragrances and sandalwood powder heap high as Mount Meru. All wondrous offerings perfectly arranged I offer to you conquerors. These vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you conquerors with the power of conviction in noble deeds, I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors. All the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind, under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions and the heirs of the Buddhas. Solitary realizers, here is still in training, beyond, and all wandering beings. You who are lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. All you who are my protectors, please turn the unexhaled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, far continent, sun and moon. I hold in mind as a Buddha land and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure land. To the Gurus who possess the three kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings. With my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence, please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment. Whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate it to complete Bodhi. Om Guru Deva Dakini Namendala Prateja Soha. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Durje Jaman Dele Naro Damami Dabu Baduje Dengon Garden Sunden Sovela Meshap Sajula Mayidam Chogala So what the Sodaje change can bring it to me something get up by those of you get so make your what do Chang Ba Jiden Compashabla do the tattoos and you kill it, matching geology. Ninguém members and again sempre de do Bergingelo, Hong Jin Johnson, Permangas, Atombola, yes, and jogging would be never imagination, Kodo Kantum Pongo, Kages, and Todd, the Gaging of Jesus. So Guru Bemas de Hong. Put down it to Sanjay Kunjing over near as in Chokung and Tone Zeba. So we love me Shabla so. So I want to update. I mentioned, I think, in one class last week that we are planning possibly an in-person retreat in Costa Rica. So probably this is only relevant to those of us who are living in the Americas. So if Javier can share the link, we have worked out some of the details of this retreat. It will be 5 nights, 6 nights, 5 full days of programs, 1 day to arrive, and then the 7th day to leave. So if you're interested in this program, it seems like it's filling up quick. But there are still some spaces, no time to waste if you're interested. We're thinking it's February 16 to 22nd. So all we have done now is to locate a retreat center and then to ask what prices they can give us for those 6 nights, 7 days. So the cost that we are showing in our information page is just what you pay to the retreat center. It includes 3 meals a day and lodging and all that. And so then the information page will tell you what other costs you need to factor in. Especially if you are in Central South America, flight no more than 200 US. If you're in North America, anywhere from 400 to 500-600. So do take a look and do act on it and don't wait. So the topic for this retreat is basically meditation, the Shravasti meditation that His Holiness has started to emphasize, which is basically a meditation on breath. Of course, it will include the all our opening practices and conclusion, and so that will be usually second half of the day. First half of the day will include, of course, we'll also have meditation, but first half of the day we'll have teachings from the great Drigong Teachings to the Assembly, which is a collection of 30 teachings that Gyobajit and Sumgun gave over a period of 30 days. So the first 5 days of teachings will be the first 5 teachings that we will look at for this retreat. My dream, fantasy, whatever you want to call it, is to have a 30-day retreat where the book will be done in the style of the 30 days, 1 day each in the morning. So this pattern is well attested in the early Gagyupa masters, is to learn in a short session in the beginning of the day, and then the rest of the day, individuals will go and meditate, and do contemplative practice, usually individually in their own spaces, and sometimes coming together. Then next day again, the teachings are given, and then the second part of the day is the practice part. So we'll try to replicate that. Just one small point to clarify, just so you all know a little bit. As part of my livelihood, I do take tours and pilgrimages, especially to Asia. So in the past, I've taken people to Bhutan, to Nepal, India, Southeast Asia. This program is not part of that explicitly business adventure. This program is, there is no profit being factored into the cost, except for whatever the retreat center needs to profit in order to exist. So this is not one of the tours that I do under Tibetan spirit travels. So the cost is just whatever we have learned from this retreat facility that we're going to be using. As for Tibetan spirit travels, probably I won't really plan anything until later part of 2022. Since it involves going to Asia, that is a bigger plan for most people, and considering that most things are still, it seems to be stabilizing, but we don't know. Nothing is sure. So then, to avoid complication, I've decided probably not to do anything for Tibetan spirit travels until later next year, later part of 2022. Furthermore, somebody asked if we will be Zooming this so that people in Asia especially could participate. I said, no, probably not, because where we will be doing the programs, firstly, we don't know, sometimes indoor, sometimes outdoor. So the Zoom is going to be very unreliable. Secondly, I said, it's better if this is done in person. So also to plant a seed so that the next time I'm in Asia, if there are people in Asia interested in having such a thing, we can organize such a program. And among our group, we have connections to retreat centers. So we can have that in Asia in the future. Apologies for this public service announcement as well as commercial break. The retreat is the public service announcement. The Tibetan Spirit Travels is the commercial break. Or what they these days call like product placement, in a program. You'll see, like the Apple, phone, turning up in some movie again and again. It's like some Apple paid the program. So we are in the chapter on diligence. So last class, we the last stanza we looked at in the last class is the 16th stanza, where there it for the first time in Bodhicharyavatara, it talks about what is now very well known as the practice of Tonglen. So the last line of stanza 16 is talking about Tonglen. But as it is shown here, you cannot just simply jump into Tonglen. It has to begin with the equalizing first of self and other. Because right now, we instinctively think of self and self-interest and self-preservation, or even something as simple as my way of looking at things. And even with that, we don't really say my way of looking at things. We just say, this is how things are. When in fact, when we say this is how things are, we really mean, to be technically more accurate, we really mean, well, this is how I see it. But how I see it is assumed, is how it is. Yeah, so self is overwhelmingly against other right now. So first, need to equalize self and other, according to the third line of stanza 16. So beginning with working on equalizing self and other, then we slowly move in the direction of exchanging of self and other, whereby other increasingly becomes more important than self. All of this is to be cultivated based on, at the very least, an intellectual understanding, and appreciation that really, when we are at the state of Buddha, we will fully and truly understand there is no difference between self and other. These two practices, these two steps, no matter where we are in these two steps, and they're not like two clear steps, if you really understand this process, it's like a line, and where you are on this line, right? This continuum. So no matter where you are on this continuum, moving from, here, self more important than others, self equal to others, others more important than self, Now, all of this is to be cultivated, to be developed, to mature based on an underlying understanding that from the perspective of Buddhists, when we are awake, there is no difference between self and other. So Shantideva says, so here when Shantideva says, when we practice diligence, when we practice virya, effort, essentially this effort is effort towards what? This effort is effort towards the practice of equalizing self and other, the practice of eventually others becoming more important than self. So that joyful effort needs to be moving in this direction. And so then it is in the next chapter, chapter 8, the chapter on samadhi, meditative concentration, that this practice is elaborated. So in the verses 15 and 16, this is the second type of laziness that Shantideva is addressing, how to counteract second type of laziness. So this is the laziness of, instead of engaging in virtue, we would rather engage in non-virtue and waste away our time, our resources. Being distracted by sense enjoyments and sense pleasures, and therefore having no time for actually cultivating the causes of happiness. So we have to remember and to understand, you know, like that we have the second type of laziness, that we indulge in sense experiences, sense enjoyments and pleasures. In fact, if we look further into that, we see that where is that coming from? That we want pleasure, yes? It's, don't misunderstand that as like something bad, that makes you a bad person. Be careful. Sometimes religious types can become very judgmental towards ourselves, judgmental towards others. Here, the problem with sense enjoyments and sense pleasures is that they, if we only pursue them, which is what most of the time we are doing, we are trying to solve a problem that cannot be solved that way. And that's why the Buddha pointed to how sense enjoyments and sense pleasures, right, is dangerous. Dangerous because no matter how much of that that we are able to obtain, they will not really give us what we are really looking for. And what are we looking for? We are looking for happiness, but we don't know the causes of happiness. So when we don't understand this, then we exaggerate the ability of sense enjoyments. Then there's no end to chasing after that. And we will not achieve the true goal that we want. And furthermore, right, the true goal that we want, which is happiness, or rather, even more precise, we don't want suffering, right? We don't want suffering. From the Mahayana perspective, from the Buddha nature teachings, which Shantideva doesn't directly address, just to point out, but it's part of it. From the Buddha nature teachings, it says that our innate nature is Buddha. And part of this Buddha state, awakened state, is there is no dukkha, there is no suffering. And so right now, even though we are so far, some days you feel that we are further from other days, from being awake, instinctively, without anyone teaching us. And in fact, whether we are human, just born, or a worm that just born, or a god in the god realm that is just born, without being taught instinctively, we are not comfortable with suffering, with dukkha. Nobody needs to teach us. Why? Because it is against our nature, which is Buddha. You see? So in fact, even, this chasing after sense pleasures, chasing after meaningless distractions, ironically, is because our nature is Buddha. So my point is, don't denigrate that nature. If you begin to relate to sense experiences as bad, pleasure as bad, it's not that pleasures are bad. But when we chase after pleasure, thinking that they are they can give us what we truly want, then we will be stuck forever in this cycle. Let's see if there are any questions about this, since this is not explicitly in this text, but I don't want you to forget, some of the broader context and understanding that we should have when we study this text. You can type your questions in the chat if you are shy, or if your background is too noisy. I see a question. I thought Tonglen was taking and giving rather than equalizing and exchanging. Yes, Tonglen literally is taking and giving, but the practice of taking and giving is basically a technique used to cultivate these two. equalizing self and other, exchanging self and other. So chapter 8 will explain this more clearly. So in the Tonglen, that technique that has been popularized, you imagine taking everyone's suffering, giving others your happiness, In the Dugong tradition, we are a little bit hesitant to recommend this to everyone. Because Kyobaji Dinsungan takes very seriously, he says, even when we imagine, which is what Tonglen, using imagination, not even, he says, imagination, what your mind is experiencing, that is your reality. So then he says, if you don't have the capacity, and you think, oh, and you actively cultivate, I'm going to take suffering, I'm going to take suffering. And then especially, I think, in us, there is wanting to be a hero, And then we take suffering like this. It can cause problems. Is it good to be altruistic? Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, is it good to be altruistic? Yeah, of course it is. But if you see, right, your neighbor having a lot of anger, and you say, give me your anger. Then yourself already very angry, You go take your neighbor's anger, you don't know what to do with it, First, you need to know what to do with your own anger. And it's like, oh, yes, I can plant my anger into the ground and it will grow a beautiful sunflowers next spring. Then you can go to your neighbor and say, hey, can I have some of your anger? I need it as fertilizer, for my sunflowers. But most of the time, we don't even know what to do with our mental defilements. then especially, many of us who are attracted to the Buddhist path, we are already kind of, not everyone, but the majority, are already kind of slightly depressed, The style is a little melancholic, then, we should not invite, more suffering. Got to be careful, So what we can do first is, practice more metta. Breathe in kindness, remembering the goodwill and the love and kindness that others have shown us. Breathe in that. And then we experience, we remember, we touch, we experience that kindness, that goodwill that others have given us. Then we can breathe out, kindness, goodwill, metta to others. Breathe in, kindness. Breathe out, kindness. Breathe in, goodwill. Breathe out, goodwill. That, if we're able to do that, that's giving and taking, Taking, what are you taking? You're accepting the kindness. Reliving the kindness and the goodwill that others have shown us. And once we remember that, so this is a practice of remembering. It's also what mindfulness means. Smriti, or sati means mindful. Mindful of how we have been the recipient of so many beings, kindness and goodwill and good intentions. So we breathe in, then breathe out, kindness, and goodwill to others. So there's a question. Do you think that by taking on others' anger and dissolving it, letting it go, as I have been taught, we also train how to dissolve our own anger? Well, only you can answer that question. If it has worked for you, then I guess it has worked for you. All I'm saying is that actually Tonglen practice is within the tradition, not just Drigong. And for this, I can say I can back up what I'm saying here. In fact, Tonglen is a very advanced within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but somehow, it has been popularized in the West. But it's a very advanced practice. And so just understand that point. Then after that, none of this, in the Buddhist tradition, we don't have commandments. Thou shalt or thou shalt not. I like to say, maybe I should not say this with regards to the Buddha's actual words, but with regards to what I'm saying, you just take it as prompts. meaning it will prompt you. It will serve as a prompt to then consider and then to test it, to see. So think about it in this way. So if it has worked, that you're able to dissolve when you breathe in other people's anger, well, then it must work, so in fact, in the Lojong 7 points, where this Tonglen practice is taught, in the Lojong 7 points by Geshe Chekawa, he actually says, begin, he says, begin with yourself. He says, Tonglen, begin with yourself. What does he mean? He says, take your exchange take the anger of your future self, take the suffering of your future self now, and give the happiness of your present self to your future self. He's doing an interesting thought experiment. He says, start like this. So start by, taking your own anger and dissolving that. Verses 17 to 31, Shantideva is, according to Khenpo Kumbel's division of this text, is the section where he teaches how to cultivate the antidote to the third kind of laziness, which is the kind of laziness that turns up in the form of self-deprecation and kind of defeatism. You think, oh no, I'm not able, oh no, I'm not capable, using that kind of as a way to not strive in this practice. So here it says, so let's read 17 to 31. Oh, but how could I become enlightened? Don't excuse yourself with such despondency. The Buddha who declares the truth has truly spoken and proclaimed that if they bring forth strength of perseverance, even bees and flies and gnats and grubs will gain supreme enlightenment, so hard to find. And if by birth and lineage of humankind, I'm able to distinguish good from ill and do not leave aside the Bodhisattva deeds, why should I not attain the state of Buddhahood? That I must give away my life and limbs alarms and frightens me. If so you say, your terror is misplaced, confused. You fail to see what's hard and what is easy. For myriads of ages, measureless, uncounted, your body has been cut, impaled, burned, torn, for times past numbering. Yet none of this has brought you Buddhahood. The hardships suffered on the path to Buddhahood are limited in their extent and likened to the pain of an incision made to cure the harms of inward ills. And all our doctors cure disease by means of bitter remedies. Likewise, to destroy a vast amount of pain, we should be patient with our little hurts. And yet the supreme healer does not use, like them, these common remedies. With ways of extreme tenderness, he soothes away intense and boundless suffering. Our guide instructs us to begin by giving vegetable greens or other little things, that later, step by step, the habit once acquired, we may be able to donate our very flesh. For when we truly feel our bodies are no different from the given herbs, what hardship can there be in giving up, relinquishing our very flesh? Sin has been abandoned, thus there is no pain. Through having wisdom, there is no more sorrow. For it is that mind and body both are injured by false views and sinfulness. Merit is the true cause of the body's ease, while happiness of mind is had through understanding. What can sadden those who have compassion, who remain within samsara for the sake of beings? For through their power of bodhicitta, former sins are totally consumed, and merit, ocean vast, is gathered in. It is therefore said that they excel the Shravakas. Mounted on the horse of bodhicitta, which puts to flight all mournful weariness, what lucid person could be in despair, proceeding in this way from joy to joy? The forces that secure the good of beings are aspiration, steadfastness, relinquishment, and joy. Aspiration grows through fear of suffering and contemplation of the benefits to be attained. Therefore, leaving everything that is adverse to it, I'll labor to increase my diligence through aspiration, self-confidence, relinquishment, and joy, by strength of earnest application and exertion of control. So 17, yeah, so Shantideva says, sometimes, you might say, But how can I be enlightened? And here is mostly, it's not so much said in the sense of like sincerely, you feel like you're inadequate. But this is especially when, because of laziness, because of not wanting to take the heart away, then we say, oh, no, I can't do that, right? He says, don't excuse yourself with such despondency. And don't have false pride. I mean, false humility. Don't have false humility. He says, because the Buddha has already declared, even bees and flies and gnats and grubs will attain Buddhahood by the strength of perseverance. By the strength of not giving up. Again, here, right, Shantideva is not saying, so just like with the practice of Tonglen, we're not saying don't practice Tonglen, we're saying you have to build up your abilities and don't back down from building up your abilities. It's not 0 or 100. In between 0 and 100, there are many steps. Don't give up. Keep persevering. And don't use the excuse of like, oh, no, this is beyond me. This is too hard. It says, even gnats and grubs. But now, in verse 19, we have been born with a human form, with a human life, with all the endowments and all the freedoms. We cannot say, oh, no, I cannot achieve Buddhahood. So I cannot do these things. It says, no, don't say that. Verse 20, again, the person might say, oh, I don't know, giving away my life, my limbs, this is really scary. I cannot do this. So here in this section, Shantideva says, yeah, points out, we can use this excuse. We take like the scariest kind of like, what? So this is like a real Tonglen, like Tonglen in 3D, like I have to give away my body, my limbs, my head. I say, no, this frightens me. So Shantideva says, now, this terror is misplaced, confused, he says. In fact, if you want to take it to such extreme, kind of like examples, which, yes, we have examples of the Bodhisattva, Buddha Shakyamuni's past life, many stories like that, how, right, he sacrificed himself to feed the hungry tigress so that the hungry tigress won't eat her cubs in her hunger and weakness. Stories like that. So if if you listen to a story like that and instead of inspiring you, you're like, no, I can't do those things, Shantideva said, now let's think this through. Let me walk you through this, which is, he says, actually, think about how many lifetimes we have been cut, we have been impaled, we have been burned, we have been torn, and all of that. Not even for the sake of achieving Buddha, but for the sake of, loving someone, trying to prove that you really love them, whether it's a romantic partner or even, children and family. It says, but all of that, what has that resulted in? In the pursuit of like momentary enjoyments. I mean, think about like the people who are involved in extreme sports, like rock climbing, scaling Mount Everest, dropping dead, doing dangerous things like this. But we admire, these extreme sports. We're like, wow, wow, wow. And then if we hear that, oh, someone, doing some spiritual practice and then an accident happened, we're like, oh, see, those things are dangerous. With extreme athletes, we say, well, she died doing what she enjoyed doing. Yes. If someone went on some pilgrimage, passed away, you say, oh man, that's like crazy. They should not do this. They should have stayed at home. And basically, Shantideva is saying this, we wreck our health in the name of like, success. Providing for my family, all of that, in the name of, whether it is or not, even that we should look deeper into it, exactly why. Dalai Lama said, we work so hard in the name of providing for ourselves and our family. All we're doing is we're making enough money to pay for our hospital bills. And yet that we don't know how to fear. When someone comes to us and say, why don't you practice the Bodhisattva path? You're like, oh, no. That's like, very dangerous. Yeah, that's a lot of very hard. Meanwhile, we go through all kinds of hardship. We just say, oh no, that's okay. So we should think about, like really, Shantideva says, you should really think about how we say, oh, it's too high, oh, it's too far, oh, it's too hard, oh, it's too cold, oh, it's too expensive, oh, it's too dangerous, all of that are excuses that we use. And meanwhile, we waste away our precious human life, getting distracted with other things. Basically, all these excuses that we have, when we are presented with opportunities to practice, to cultivate the mind, we come up with all kinds of things. And to the extent of like, oh no, I cannot give away my head. Are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? I can't give away my head, right? He says, of course, yes. But you're using that as an excuse. We're not asking you to give away your head right now. Yeah. So it's on verse 22. So the hardships, he says, you should think of the hardships that you might suffer on the path to awakening, to be similar to how, a doctor might need to make an incision. So in that moment, right? So let's say if there's a bullet lodged in you, in order to remove the bullet, the doctor has to make an incision. In order to remove something that's causing problems, the doctor has to temporarily cause some pain in order to heal the harm that is lodged in. Likewise, whatever difficulties that we face should be experienced, should be regarded in the same form. So 23. So doctors prescribe bitter remedies, bitter literally, medicine, until the modern times when make into pills, maybe you don't taste the bitterness. Medicine is bitter. And so, but this will destroy a vast amount of pain. So be patient, he says, with the little hurts. Don't just say, oh, no, I can't. Oh, no, this is bitter. And there's a comment and question. I once heard a Sufi teacher say that trying to do advanced practices without guidance is like trying to remove your own appendix with a penknife. Do you see any dangers in some of the advanced Buddhist practices that we can learn? Yeah, of course. That's my point about the Tonglen, like Tonglen, I have Tibetan doctors who work in the West tell me, so many Dharma practitioners that come to them have wind imbalances. And then when they look further and investigate further and ask them, what do you do? What is your job? This and that. And then finally, it's like, what kind of meditations do you do? And they find that, then the answer is, oh, I do Tonglen. And the Tibetan doctors say, no, please don't do that. Because it will cause imbalances. If you have not trained your muscles, because you are all over the place, so yes, of course, this is like rewiring the whole system is what we're doing. So now more and more, actually, there are studies. I know the trend now is like mindfulness meditation will solve all your problems. This is a modern claim, okay? Really, this is a modern claim. In the literature of the tradition, whether you're Theravada, whether you're Mahayana or Vajrayana, whatever, it says that these practices have to come with a proper container. And they all talk about, Zen tradition talk about Makyo, which is demonic states that arise during meditation and how you need to be guided. But in the popularization of this, so now, right now, actually, there is a group of people studying the negative effects of when mindfulness meditation goes wrong. I know some of the people involved, and the people who don't know these people, I have also seen how on social media and everything, they say, oh, these people hate meditation, they have an agenda, blah, blah, blah. I say, no, I know these people, they themselves are meditators. And they're doing research with psychologists, documenting cases of these things going wrong. And then, of course, the people who don't like meditation will say, oh, see, but you're like, no, the Buddha and all the lineage, masters of various traditions already describe all the dangers. Yes, of course, there are dangers. And this is Shantideva's point. But don't exaggerate the dangers, but also don't be foolish and ignore what has been identified as, okay, over here, be careful, over there, be careful, but don't give up. Don't give up. This is the important point in this section here. So let us take a short break right now, and then we'll come back.
Wage Joare Mum, 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 Wage Joare wage joare mum, 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 wage joare mum.
Let's see if there are any questions, comments. So verse 24, Shantideva says, and even that, the supreme healer, the Buddha, does not use common remedies that literally involve physical pain. But with extreme tenderness, he soothes away intense and boundless suffering. So the Buddha doesn't prescribe, pain as a solution to our problems. He says, even that, Shantideva says, I'm using the doctor analogy as an analogy. So whatever difficulties that you face is just the difficulties that comes from resistance, from conditions that we find ourselves in. As for the Buddha himself, the instruction he gives us, none of it literally involve pain. Now, this point is against the background of certain Indian spiritual practices common during Buddha's time and also in Shantideva's time and down to our present day. That might encourage kind of mortification of the body, such as cutting it, such as burning it, such as like starving. Like if you go to like Varanasi, you can see some of these ascetic practices, like holding up one hand, and that hand has been like tied to something for 20, 30 years. And basically that hand is already dead. So doing things like this. So there are, spiritual traditions that literally prescribe pain. Like cutting yourself, beating yourself, whipping yourself. Shantideva says, the Buddha doesn't use any of these methods. Buddha himself tried these methods, right? During the 6 years when he was practicing and searching out different ways, and he understood, no, this kind on inflicting on pain on the body doesn't actually bring about the liberation that we are looking for. The path will involve difficulties, but the Buddha doesn't prescribe pain as a method. Verse 25, he begins. So this is also where we can see how it's saying we should train our hearts, our mind, so that we arrive at a place that if the situation arises that we have to give our lives, give our limbs for the sake of others, we will be able to do it. But it doesn't mean day one you're expected to do it. So this is where Shantideva says on verse 25, he says, our guide, meaning the Buddha, instructs us to begin by giving vegetable greens and other little things that later, step by step, the habit once acquired, we may be able to donate our very flesh. Right? In fact, elsewhere, the Buddha even said, you can begin by cultivating giving, generosity of heart, by right hand giving left hand giving right hand. Then he says, for when we truly feel our bodies are no different from the given herbs, what hardship can there be in giving up, relinquishing our very flesh? Now here he begins to point us in the direction of the need to cultivate understanding, to cultivate what we call wisdom. Yeah? So in stanza 27, he says, through having wisdom, there is no more sorrow. And how, what is this about? This wisdom is to be free from erroneous views, to be free from mistaken views. So the mistaken view, it need not be talking about like, you know, oh, you got Madhyamaka wrong, you got Chittamatra wrong, you know, things like that. You don't understand the Abhidharma, blah, 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 all those things, you know, that, you know, it's nice to debate about those things. Here, more fundamentally, we're talking about the view that we talked about at the start of today's class. Those types of wrong views, which is the wrong view that thinks, oh, deep down, I don't want suffering. So I only want happiness. So now, oh, looking at pretty things, easy on the eyes. Oh, that makes me feel good. Eating tasty things. Oh, that makes me feel good. Okay, I'm gonna go get more pretty things to look at, tasty things to eat, and thinking maximizing that is going to free me from dukkha. That's the kind of wrong view that really afflicts us. So in this context of the ability to give ourselves completely for the sake of others, for the benefit of others, that we cannot do that now yet is because this view that I, me, and mine is more important than anything else, that wrong view needs to be dispelled. We need to work on eroding away, bit by bit, chip away that wrong view. When we're able to do that, then what in my translation, maybe you don't like this word, sin. It says sin has been abandoned. So here you could say negative actions, negative karma has been abandoned. Misdeed has been abandoned. And so there will be no more pain. And the best way to abandon negative karma, misdeed, is to look for the source of these negative karmas, which is the kind of wrong views that I was talking about. In verse 28, Shantideva tells us about the two accumulations and how it relates to the welfare of body and mind. It's a very nice verse here. It says, merit is the true cause of the body's ease. So if we are to match these two accumulations, the two accumulations is one way of describing what the practice of the path, what the process of arriving at awakening consists of. It consists of accumulating or gathering or building up merit and building up wisdom. So merit is the true cause of the body's ease. That the body will have opportunity, that the body will be in a relative state of being at ease, not afflicted by illness, by problems, by harm, by injury. He says, there are conditions, that you can try to bring about, but the true cause is what is known as merit. Then the mind's happiness is achieved chiefly through understanding, which is wisdom. The body's ease is chiefly, not exclusively, but chiefly accomplished through having a store of merit that you can use. The happiness of mind is achieved chiefly through having a store of wisdom that can eliminate every situation that we find ourselves in. When you have these two, he says, what can sadden those who have compassion, who remain within samsara for the sake of beings? So this line here, who remain within samsara for the sake of beings, right? I think we have to understand that here Shantideva is not literally saying that there is virtue to remain confused. Here he's emphasizing that even if you might feel like, I want to practice renunciation so I don't have to think about anyone's problems. Yeah, so this is in contrast to the attitude of you could say, the limited view of being awake, which is, I will mind my own business. I will just take care of myself. The rest of you, good luck. He says, no, don't go for that lesser goal. Go for the greater goal that says, yes, it's going to be harder and more inconvenient to not only think about my own welfare, but to think of the welfare of all beings. Now, he says, then you might say, well, but that will involve a lot of difficulties. He says, no, don't worry. If you truly have the true compassion of a bodhisattva, then all the difficulties that arise, you can handle them. Because you have a great store of merit and you have a great store of wisdom understanding, so nothing can really harm you. So here it says, through the power of bodhicitta, verse 29, all past negative karma are totally consumed, and merit, vast as the ocean, it's gathered, increases. So from this understanding, we see that, therefore, is said to excel the Shravakas. The Shravakas here are referring to those who practice the path, primarily just concerned that I don't want to suffer, so I'm going to work on myself. It's not saying that this is not good. It's saying that there is something even greater than this that you can work on, which is the next step. You necessarily have to start by understanding, I have this problem that I don't want. We all start there. If we stop there, then this is called the Shravaka's way. In contrast, the Bodhisattva's way is to say, well, actually, my own problems cannot really be solved without considering how all others have the same problem. So then I need to work hard. I need to persevere. I need to have diligence for the sake of removal of suffering of others. So the power of bodhicitta can overcome all the difficulties and pain that one might encounter along the way. Verse 30, mounted on the horse of bodhicitta, which puts to flight all mournful weariness. What lucid person could be in despair, proceeding in this way from joy to joy? It says, if we ride on this horse of bodhicitta, then all weariness, all feelings of like, I don't have energy, I'm really tired, all this could be dispelled, proceeding from joy to joy. So this horse is the horse of bodhicitta, which is also the meaning of the wind horse, these prayer flags, where you see a horse, and then on its back there's the jewels. This is actually, the symbol here is actually bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, that carries the precious jewels, which is, it will carry us to the state of Buddhahood. So he says, ride on this, ride on bodhicitta. And whatever difficulties, always remember how amazing bodhicitta in its two aspects are. And just go from joy to joy. Verse 30. So here, then, 31, he introduces these four forces: aspiration, steadfastness, relinquishment, and joy. These, he identifies, are the favorable conditions that will help support the growth of diligence, of joyful effort. So 31, 32 introduces us basically to the next section. The next section from 33 to 46. It's talking about the force of aspiration. Then he will talk about steadfastness, which is also defined as self-confidence. Steadfast in having self-confidence. And then the importance of relinquishment. Relinquishment here, we will see later, is interesting. He says, sometimes, if you're extremely fatigued, you can set aside first what you intended to achieve and come back to it later. See, so nothing is like, elsewhere he says, don't give up, don't give up, don't give up, right? Then if you think, oh, don't give up means you just keep banging your head against the wall. No, 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 no. Don't give up the final goal. Temporarily, in order to advance, you might have to retreat, as they say. Also know when to do that. That is the relinquishment. And then finally, joy. So these four conditions is what he's going to talk about. So basically, if you look at it, the architecture of this chapter is, the first half of the chapter is he's talking about the types of laziness and the antidotes to apply, to counteract those laziness. Then the second part is from the perspective of, and then how do we grow diligence? We grow diligence by relying on all these four favorable conditions, which is aspirations, steadfastness, which is self-confidence also, relinquishment, temporarily putting aside, and joy throughout the whole process. So here, today, we will stop here. Also want to point out this resource, which is the Shravasti meditation course. Those of you who may be attending or not, they are available, the recordings. In particular, Javier and has created audio files and putting it in the Dugong Dhammakirti page of the teachings. And those audio files have the advantage of not having the pauses, just in English. He has edited them. And one thing to point out that I just learned this morning, the audio files, if you go there, you can, where the audio files, there are like a sign like 3 dots, very subtle. If you click those dots, you have the option of downloading the audio files. So for those of you who want to do that, it might be helpful just to point that out. I said in that class, in just the previous class, this past Thursday, I said, if you don't want to continue the course, not find it not useful, then one thing I want to offer to everyone that will be helpful is you should try to regulate your breath with the mantra of Om Mani Padme Hum, sang to the tune of, and at this pace, more or less, Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. So breathe in, breathe out, in, out. If you sing this tune, this mantra at this pace, you accomplish several things. One is, you also begin to master the technique of like the Tonglen, taking, giving. In this case, more metta, meditating on Om Mani Padme Hum. Breathe in the kindness, breathe out the kindness, right? The other thing is that the time it takes is about 6 seconds, inhale, and 6 seconds, exhale. Generally, most of us, we breathe at the pace of 3 seconds inhale, 3 seconds exhale. That's not good for our physical health. And when it's not good for our physical health, it will impact our mental health. So this is something very simple that we can do that can tremendously, I think, help us both physically and mental, emotionally. So please try that. Most current research on breath, scientific research, has found that the most optimal when we are at a state of rest, and not when you're running or, but when in a state of rest, the most optimal length of time for breath is 5.5 seconds to 6. In fact, if you can increase it longer, it's even better. So 5.5 seconds to 6 for inhale, 5.5 to 6 for exhale. But most of us is actually only 3. So we are breathing twice as fast and therefore twice as much. And one of the biggest health problems, mental and physical health, is we're actually breathing too fast, too much. If you measure the distance that our breath takes, each inhalation and each exhalation, if you measure the distance that it should take to go to all the places it should go, like from the nostril into the nasal passage, down your throat, into your lungs, and branch out, then into all the different passageways, right? It's 1,500 miles, 2,400 kilometers. 6 seconds or 5.5 seconds allows it the best chance to travel all 1,500 miles. 3 seconds type of breathing, barely. So think about it. Now, of course, when I say 1,500 miles, I don't mean that your breath, has to go 1,500 miles, in a linear way. Of course, it branches out. But just to make the point, like, if you take all the distance and add them all up together, it's about 1,500 miles. So take time to breathe, take time to calm both body and mind. Chanchu semcho rinpoche ma ge ba nam ge gyu che ge ba nyam ba me ba yang gong ne gong du bel war Sure. You all have a good weekend, and we will meet again on Tuesday. Goodbye.
Gracias, Dr. Lee.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. Thank you.
Dios, gracias.
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 Buen fin de semana a todos, gracias.
Gracias, Claudia.
Gracias.